So, my last unscripted video did pretty well, and we're already on a roll here, so I figured, hey, why not talk about another thing that I'm interested in from this direct that would usually take me about like a month to write out a full script for. I want to talk about the announcement of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake for the Nintendo Switch. Or is it a remaster? I really can't tell. I don't even care about the term remake versus remaster. It's been very foggy of what exactly it is over the years. I'm just going to call it a remake. So let's just talk about it. I want to talk about my thoughts, how this has a really huge meaning that no one's really talking about, and that's basically it. So let's get right into it. So the announcement itself, it was leaked beforehand, obviously. A lot of people have heard about that. And I found it pretty expected. I mean, it made sense. We haven't seen a new one in a while, and the reason as to why we didn't see one earlier in the Switch's lifespan was because the developers, Nintendo Software Technology, which I would just call NST from now on for the sake of convenience, they had multiple projects that they were working on, such as ports of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, and they worked on Bowser's Fury. So NST finally finished all these projects, and it made sense, because after Bowser's Fury, they could get to work right on a new Mario vs. Donkey Kong game. I even predicted it last year in the Direct or something. I thought it would be a new game with co-op, and I was like 25% right. It was a remake with co-op. And I did think it would be a return to form in some form. Because, I mean, it's the Switch era of Nintendo. It's going to be hard to get away with doing a really lazy, cheap, not that much effort, bad Mario vs. Donkey Kong game, like in the Wii U and 3DS era. I mean, I'm sure those games were great in their own right, but clearly they were not what the series needed at the time. It was just not what fans wanted. The first game was the big one that people liked, not the whole, oh, you don't play as Mario, you play as the minis now. I mean, I'm sure the concept was cool in the second game, but now it just feels kind of stale and bland. And I'm glad that they're going back to the original, and hopefully, this means that they'll stay with Mario as the playable character for future games, and the games will be good again. If they continue to make the series. I'm really glad they're bringing the series back because it deserves a bigger audience. I'm a big fan of it, and I really do like the puzzle solving aspect of it. I did play a bit of the 3DS one and a bit of the original on the GBA, but I never got really deep into it, and I've always wanted to give it a try, and maybe I will before it comes out. I'm just really looking forward to seeing and playing this again, because it was part of my childhood. So I really hope that they handle this remake okay. Something I'm not really as happy with is the pricing, obviously. It's $50, which if you ask me is a bit much for a GBA remake with probably nothing else. I think it'd be more justified if it added stuff like a level editor or online something, but I really doubt they'll do that. But I do hope that they do have some sort of extra content, as it would feel really lackluster if there was really just nothing else and it was $50. I feel like $40 would make more sense, as that was what Metroid Prime Remastered was. And remember, that game was amazing. I feel like it's going to be a lot more worth Mario vs. Donkey Kong, and this Mario vs. Donkey Kong is $50 instead of $40. You know what I'm saying? So overall, I'd say the remake looks pretty great, although it is very, I don't want to say generic, but it looks very stereotypical. I get it's NST, it's an American studio, they probably don't have as much creative liberty as actual Japan studios for Nintendo and Mario, but it feels very basic, you know, almost minimalistic. Like, look at Mario's icon, it feels like something you'd see from 5 years ago during the Wii U era, or not 5 years ago, oh my god, it's been 6 years since the Switch came out, oh my god. Sorry, I'm just having a sudden realization here. Anyways, it does feel a lot more basic in terms of creativity, in which I get it's a remake of a GBA game, but it does feel very, I don't know what the word is, almost soulless? I do like it, don't get me wrong, it looks great. I shouldn't be saying this, but like, I don't know why, but it's just the way that Mario just kind of stands. It kind of frightens me, you know? It just looks a little bit lifeless, almost dull. I'm sorry for complaining, trust me, this is not the goal of the video, but I just can't help to bring that up. Something about it looks off to me. But the game looks great. Visually, it's stunning. I'm sure it's gonna play well. It's just that small thing that bothered me a bit. It's fine. So, a bit more backstory on NST. They're the only American developers at Nintendo of America. I mean, obviously there's Retro Studios, but they're in Texas. They're a bit further off from Nintendo, and they do their own projects like Metroid Prime and other various games like the modern DK games. but they also felt like they had a bit more control almost of what they could do. NST is smaller. It's like 50 employees about, apparently, and it's inside of Nintendo of America, or like right next to it. It's a lot more closely monitored, if that makes sense, at least from what I've heard. It makes sense based off seeing this remake and their games. They began with some basic titles like the Pokémon Puzzle League and other small stuff like that. Wave Race was a good title they made, but then after they started making the Mario vs. Donkey Kong games, they were suddenly, slowly but surely taking over all of their other games, so they were only making Mario vs. Donkey Kong games. It feels like they almost were taken away the privileges of making original games and just had to make Mario vs. Donkey Kong for like a whole decade almost. Part of it might have been because of Project Hammer, their most notorious cancelled game, which apparently due to quote-unquote creative differences they couldn't make. It was probably between the American division and Japan, or the higher-ups and the employees, I don't know. But it seemed to be a whole thing, and there's probably a video I can find which I'll link about it. So after that got cancelled, which was around early 2010s if I remember correctly, they made a few DSware games, but then after that, they were mainly just making Mario vs. Donkey Kong. Like, only Mario vs. Donkey Kong. There were a tiny few exceptions, but they were all mainly pretty small projects, as Mario vs. Donkey Kong were then the only thing they were known as. It was their own purgatory. They couldn't really make anything else, I would guess. Thankfully, as we exited that era of the Wii U and 3DS, they started to begin working on more ports of Captain Toad and other various games. But then that's where they got their first glimpse of hope. They worked on Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury. There's a lot of misinformation spread on about what exactly they worked on Bowser's Fury, but they did work specifically on Bowser's Fury, not the port of 3D World itself. They did make assets, they did gameplay stuff for Bowser's Fury, which a lot of people don't realize and notice that it is a huge deal. They worked on a mainline Mario project, which means that they have some sort of potential, and they did a great job with that with what they worked on. I couldn't even tell that it was made by a completely different studio. Obviously not all of it was made just by them, there's also other studios involved, but they did have a big part in it. Why did they have a big part in it? Maybe due to COVID, because they're better with working virtually than Japan was. Like, Nintendo employees couldn't even work probably for a few weeks because they needed to get all their stuff from their offices. So that might have been why they were recruited for the project, but I think they did a great job on the game. It really turned out great, and I'm sure whatever they contributed really helped it. So that really showed to Nintendo of Japan and like the main Nintendo headquarters in general, hey, they're capable of doing other things, which is why they got to work on F-Zero 99, which is another pretty big 99 game that came out as of recent, and it did great. It looks great, it's a great game, you should try it out, it's free if you have NSO, you should actually try it, I really liked it. They were the main developers of that game, and it turned out great. So hopefully, this is the big thing here, hopefully they get to work on other bigger projects again. They have the potential to make all this cool stuff, but unfortunately they've been kept in this Mario vs. Donkey Kong dungeon, and hopefully after working on F-Zero 99 and Bowser's Fury, they will get the creative liberty of working on other things again. That is, if they didn't have it before. And then obviously, yeah, they are making the Mario vs. DK remake, but I think that's kind of a sign of things to come. They do understand which was the best title and which was the best to remake. And based off how this remake looks, it's clear that they're passionate about the game and they want it to do well again. So I'm positive that whatever they're cooking in there, it's gonna be good. And I'm sure that they actually care. I'm sure it's not just gonna be a dungeon of Mario vs. Donkey Kong content like it was in the 2010s. Things are looking bright for them, so I am praying that they are able to make more creative games again. Please, Nintendo, let them out of this dungeon if it's true that they're in one. I kind of doubt it. I'm definitely over-exaggerating things, but they should definitely be able to work on more games outside of Mario vs. Donkey Kong. So yeah, to wrap this up, I'm sure the future is going to be bright for them. I'm sure the future is going to be bright for us fans of their older games. Maybe they'll bring back Wave Race, some other titles. I'm sure they could. But it's probably going to take a bit, as we still need to wait for Mario vs. Donkey Kong to come out. They're still probably going to be updating F-Zero 99 for a bit, but I'm sure things will get better. Thanks for watching.